Hey guys, Retech here, Blueberry Hill. So this video is about a week's worth of shooting. We had a little bit of weather, but not too bad. This is all the rafter work and the roof paneling and blocking, etc. that goes along with all this stud work. It's all 2x construction. The rafters up there are 2x8. They're split into two sections, the beam in the middle. And then we sister on rafters from that beam to the front of the garage, and that becomes the structure for the roof. And then we put the zip sheathing, 5/8 inch zip sheathing on the roof. Here you see me doing a little bendy of the beam. This is an LVL. It's 1 3/4 by 18 inch by 25 feet wide, and it had a little bow in it, so we're trying to take that bow out. And once we locked the rafters in, it stayed, of course, but it was little things you got to do. This is a third delivery of the beam. You might have heard me mention that in the other video, but first few were really bent, could not use them, and so these we have two of these big ones, front of the garage and in the middle here. Yeah, a little bit of work here. So we're doing the palm nailer is a fantastic tool, as I mentioned before. That's what we use to put all the hurricane hangers on, and it goes quite quickly, and it definitely saves your arm. So here I'm doing the cutouts that the top section, they're going on a 2x6 walls, so I'm cutting the recess out, and of course making the bottom curve cut so it'll sit on, the rafter will sit on top of the top plate properly. And it's just a matter of after you cut them, then you put them up there. You can see the different lengths here. So the reason for that is there's a pony wall that goes up the end of the garage. Right where you see the hole in the wall right there, right above it will be a pony wall. Actually, the pony wall is already there, you just can't see it in the video. And then over here on the left side of the garage, there's a 2-foot overhang on the back side of the garage, which is open to the back. And you can see the hurricane hangers. And that's a 2-foot overhang. Roughly everything we're doing on the house has a 2-foot overhang. Make it look pretty contemporary, and some people are calling it kind of like the Japanese look. It should be architecturally pretty pleasing, very simple, very clean lines. So say hello to my little friend, the new saw that I bought. It's a double bevel DeWalt 12-inch saw. This thing's making easier work of all these little cuts we have to do, and it'll do up to a 16-inch wide board, so fantastic. Anyway, pre-cut a bunch of blocking. Pop's here to help me put some blocking at the back of the garage. I'm not sure why we didn't block that when it was on the ground, but anyway, he's nailing them in after the fact. I'm doing the preliminary blocking on the rafters, and then we move over to the front of the garage and finish that off. This all makes everything nice and solid, of course. So my buddy G showed up. I blasted a 55 Chevy frame, or 57, I can't remember which. Anyway, we did one little template cut, see how the front rafters were going to go. He helped me put it up, and then we had an idea of what we were going to do, and we called it good for that day. Yay! And the next day I come back and finish the whole thing off. But it was a good way to end the day. Had a couple of beers after, and everything was good. So here's January 31st. So I'm finishing up the front rafters. I basically started doing a conveyor belt build here. I put 5/6 down on the horseshoes and started cutting everything out before I put it up. They're all the same size, so I pre-cut everything, pre-measured, pre-cut, and then just threw them up there one at a time, and went pretty easily. And then they're sistered to the rafters that are on top of the beam in the middle of the garage. Quite solid, and everything came out pretty good actually. So, and you can see all that extra wood on the back of the 350 right there. Yay! So after cutting them, it was a pretty easy process. Just throw them up one at a time. They're 16 feet long, so it wasn't too bad. Just stick one end on the one side of the garage and just pull it up on the go up on the ladder and sister it up. Everything just snaps into place, and then nail it. And then on the bottom side, we put the hurricane hangers up as we go. What I kind of might have done a little bit differently is actually do the blocking as I went. That would have been, spacing wise, it would have made a lot more sense. Building the rafters with blocking in between as you go makes everything a little more true. The blocking is all 14 and a half inch because we're doing 16 on center. pretty much everything we're doing. So here I am putting the top plate on the beam in the front. It's a 2x6. All the rafters sit on top of that, and of course there's a kick out. You can't see the kick out, but on the bottom side is a 2-foot overhang. Kick out on the rafters, which I cut out that I talked about earlier. So almost done. Last few rafters go up, and then I'm done for the day. Come back the next day and I do a ton of blocking work, finishing up all the little details, put all the rest of the paneling up on the wall, and get ready for outside sheathing, making sure everything's nice and flush so we can put the sheathing on without any trouble. So here I'm finishing up all the blocking work. These are all cut the same, so basically I did 14.5 inch, 16 on center. Most of the rafters came up pretty nice. They got pretty good bows in them. Some are twisted a little bit, but once you get the blocking in there, everything stiffens up and makes everything true. So it became a nice solid structure. Definitely need the blocking there. There's blocking on the top, middle, on top of the beams, and later on the front, I'll do some trim work so we can hang wallboard up on it. And the wallboard we haven't done yet, even after doing this video. That's going to go up there. The sheathing, rather, on the front of the building. So February 1st, basically all I did was a bunch of blocking. I was doing this on my own as well, so what I ended up doing is measuring all the spans. They were slightly off, even though they were measured and hammered in place properly, but they're a quarter inch, eighth of an inch thing. So I basically did all the measurements, wrote them on top of the header, the top plate, went down, cut them, threw them up on the scaffold, and just banged them into place. Pretty straightforward. Oh, the fun stuff, the high off the wall zip sheathing, zip tape. I just put those panels in place, and now finishing up the zip tape work. I hate the high stuff hanging over the wall like that, and there's no good place to put a ladder from the outside wall, so didn't feel that great doing it, but there it is. Anyway, had to be done, so little detail work, finished that up, and moving on to the next big thing. So February 2nd, Pop came out to help me do the overhangs and the paneling, the initial sheathing on the roof. All the blocking work was done, etc. And here we are putting the kickouts. The bad part was, I guess my math was okay, but execution of making the wall, it was a little bit high by a half an inch. So we had to actually cut little recesses in the 2x so it would fit properly and make everything nice and flush. I guess, from a standpoint of making the wall just 28 feet long, I got off a little bit. On the bottom side it was pretty good, on the top side it was off a little higher, so the offsets were, the cuts we had to make were a little bit bigger on the top side than compared to the bottom, but it all worked out. So after all the kickouts were put in, Pop and I started doing the paneling, and here we are I'm basically trimming off the excess. I learned to do a little more saw action on panels than I anticipated. If something's not true, basically the saw fixes all that. So I run a string line and then cut the panels, and we're good to go. And I believe Pop actually left before I started doing this, but nevertheless I got about a third of the way done through the all of the sheathing. Here's a quick look from the inside the garage. Mostly done. A lot of detail work was done. I did some paneling the day before, and I'm going to continue doing the rest of the sheathing now. So not to bore you guys, sheathing, you just kind of move it along, put it in place. The thing I learned to do with the sheathing is if it didn't fit, if it's not 100% square, you just take the buzz saw and take a little bit off, and everything kind of falls into place. I had to do a couple of sisters here and there to make sure that the nails on the paneling hit a solid rafter. Not a big deal. And then here I'm doing the final touches of all the little cuts underneath the overhang for the living room. That didn't take too long, just a little bit of cutting using some spare paneling. So on the 4th, I started doing February 4th, I started doing the last trim work on the top side, and then Jake and Pop came over and we're going to finish up the overhang on the left side of the garage. I basically left Jake in charge of doing that. He did really good. We had a scaffold set up underneath the roof inside the garage, of course, and we cut all the blocking 14.5 inch, and then we just went to town on putting the little kickouts. You can see that they're tied to the initial rafter on the inside, and then they sit on top of the top plate on the wall itself. So they're using that straight edge right there, the 2x, just to make sure everything's nice and level. The blocking that you see between the 2x's, that's all 14.5 inch. He puts it in place, make sure it's level, so it's easier to put the trim on later, and of course make everything nice and flush. Then they use a right angle just to make sure that the kickout is perpendicular to the rafter, plus or minus a little teeny bit, and everything comes out nice and true. Jake always nails the blocking first, and then he finish nails it into the rafter. It's a pretty good setup. I believe they were like 21 or 22 rafters. Basically divide 28 by 16 and 16 inches, and you'll get how many rafters are there, or kickouts rather. So a little bit of work. Took a few hours, but we got it done. They did a great job. I come back here in a little bit and start throwing panels up where Jake is standing. So I had to wait for him to finish all that. And this day we got everything pretty much finished up for the paneling, and the main part of the roof was done. So here I am following up with the panels as they do the kickouts. I'm not trying to step on their toes, so I'm just wait until they're done, and then I move the panel in place, nail it down, and make everything good. Here you'll see me probably use the saw. Oh, there's a nail that I popped. Funny. Some of these panels, everything's not 100% square, so I did a little tiny bit of trim work on some of these panels to get them in place, and that was quite easy once I figured out that I need to be doing that. You watch these guys on the roofs do it all day long, and I'm sure nothing's 100% straight or square at least. So they do the same thing, and it makes it go pretty easy. So while those guys finish up the kickouts, I'm actually doing the trimming up the overhangs, so they're getting ready for the trim work. I don't do it this day, but I get ready for it, and I use the old skill saw and I cut the extra off. I don't like doing this part because the saw's kind of heavy. I don't have a light version of a skill saw. Pop had one, but it didn't seem to cut through the entire 2x4 all at one swoop, so I had to resort to this big one. Here we are, we're trying to figure out a little bump. That's a section needed a little bit of trimming work on the 2x's, and we ended up taking a tiny bit off the top plate with the Sawzall. No detail work here. It's basically just almost rattering out a dado for the 2x. Very little, maybe 1/8 of an inch, and that was all it needed. And then bang it in and good to go. So you're going to see the skill saw in action for trying to put this panel in. They're a little bit off kilter, about 1/8 of an inch. I like the gaps to be a little tighter, so I basically take a little bit off, and have the saw, of course, set just to the depth of the zip sheathing, and then I bang it in, and good to go. And here we go with the last panel of the day. We bang this in, and we sit around and have a couple of beers. Yay! Anyway, good job by Jake and Pop. it went pretty smooth. We just kind of banged it out. I guess we spent 3 to 4 hours doing this work, maybe a little more. From the shadows, it's probably like 4:30ish or something. So everything went pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and appreciate the help. So here's February 5th. Basically, I had to do just a couple hours worth of work here. The final trim work, I use the clamps, put a board underneath the overhang, put the trim on it, and then bang it into place. 45-degree corners, and I kind of mess up on the bottom side. I measured on the inside, and I cut like it was on the outside, so I had to do a little bumping there. You'll see that in the video. No big deal, just had to put another piece on there and use some screws to make the corner work. But here I am. I had to, since there was a panel there, I had to take that short panel off at the very top. I'm not sure you saw that. And then I put the clamp in there, and I'm banging everything into place. So pretty straightforward. So these trim pieces are all 16 feet long. It kind of worked extremely well because the roof is actually 32 feet long with the 2-foot kickouts on the top and bottom. So I didn't have to do any trimming, just the 45 at corners, pop it into place, and off I went. So here I'm trying to make sure everything is nice and true. Use the clamps to adjust for any kind of height differences. A couple of them needed 1/4 inch kind of persuasion. Popped the nails in and everything was good. I started using that other 2x4 that I'm leaning on as support, because hanging over the edge. I just don't like it. Just trying to be safe anyway. So here I am fixing the corner. I've actually cut it off with the skill saw. I had the other 45 piece that I cut off. I'm going to reuse it, and I'm just putting a support piece behind the 2x. I'm going to screw it in, make it nice and flat. Then I'm going to use clamps to, you can see a little bit of a tweak to the 2x. Use a clamp and screw everything together. I didn't use nails here, I used screws. Just easier to get everything trued up, lined up, and then bang the screw in. Nails sometimes don't help so much because the gun's heavy and awkward, so using the screws was a better fit, I believe. Here I am putting the last corner piece on, and this is a result of me cutting on the inside line, which is supposed to be the outside line. So there you go. And then the rest was just putting up the last bit of paneling. I snapped the string line. You can see a blue line right there. Measured it all up, even though it was pretty much square. It was still off, a little bit. String line helps make sure everything's nice and true. Banged it into place and zip taped it, and I was done for the day. And finally the zip tape, and off you go. So this place will be mostly 99% watertight. The back wall still has holes in it, which is going to help us put the wood on top of the yellow containers. You'll see that later. And we're going to build that wall next at the back end of the garage. So the holes are left there so we can crawl in and out of that space and throw material up through it as well. It's going to be interesting trying to put the material on the top of the containers after this. So we'll come to that later. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching. Come back again and watch our fanatic stuff happening. Anyway, appreciate it. Ciao.